My grandmother, the doctor got that, yeah. Grammys, and they would make a Christmas pudding with the dye, London hot sauce. And they use that, and they use, and I'm her sugar cookie recipe I use, and it's absolutely delicious, and it's large. Large and buttermilk.
The way it used to be, people were skinny.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do Parks and Recreation. And, yeah, you have this about. I'm, here, this is the start of my 38th year with the Town of Topsham. I haven't. I'm like Labby is, but I see a couple years more and then we'll see what happens, so.
We'll name the office after you, Pam. Pam will do, Rick.
Just going through our staffing, not a lot has changed. Myself as the director, Kelly Fountain is our assistant and the program coordinator. And we do have 4 program assistants now, just because Jerry and Nick are wanting to do less. So we picked up a couple other folks that help us out when they can't, and that is Steve Kessler and Tony Creek. We also have 2 staff whose primary role is to maintain the Parks and Recreation facilities, but they work through the Public Works Department now. And I have to add that that's going quite smoothly. Dennis has taken that on, and he and I talk regularly and are pleased with the fact that when the Public Works Department needs someone to do sidewalks, he can pull one of our people, and one of ours can keep plowing down at the rec field. So it's going quite well. Brittany's learned how to drive the snow plow or the sidewalk plow. So. And in addition to that, we have 25 students in stipend positions per season that help us out and coach or referee for us or time keep. And then approximately 150 coaches and program volunteers. About 5 years ago, actually, when Kelly went full time and Jerry retired from being on in our department, we switched over to a website based registration process. And for $4,250 a year, we can track the time of our programs, the use of our fields, create rosters with a click, communicate either by text or via email to all of our participants. We can divide our emails up by the age, by the grade, by whether they're a resident or a non-resident who's registered. It's been very productive for us, and they can make payments either there. We can create an invoice. They can go in and make their own payment. And then we simply work with the finance office to let them know how much money goes into what revenue line. So it's been very productive. And I think, Kathy, it's worked smoothly since you've been here, right? No issues. Yeah, the company has been great to work with. In our budget this year, we have a 5% increase overall. Most of that comes out of payroll and insurance. Some things have gone down to bounce that off. We have a little bit of an increase in advertising and printing. And then the other things that have increased are basically baseball and program lines. But as I think most of you on the finance and I know the select board is aware, all of our program lines bounce off of our revenue. So if we have anything that goes up in program, it counterbalances in revenue. So if you take a look at our next line, you can see that we have an increase in the revenues to the same degree, so that they match up. So that anything that changes as far as the program reflects that increase for revenue.
What are some of the program cost increases? Is it uniforms going up?
Participation, those types of things, scholarships sometimes that we provide for other students. We try to keep a scholarship fund for those parents that are in need.
Okay.
I have to say Topsham is pretty affluent as far as folks being able to register and pay the registration fees. But one of the things they do, there are on occasion, we are reached out, we have a good communication system with the counselors in both of the elementary schools. So if there's a need, they'll call us and tell us. We also kind of in the back of our head know some of the families who might need that help and work with them. We work with payment plans for folks. Not everything has to be done right away. We try to make everything work for them.
So can you go back one slide?
Sure.
Take, or one more slide, sorry, the cost. So like the soccer fields, I'm assuming we own, we don't pay for the fields at all.
Right, but
We
we,
volunteer coaches.
Yep.
The only thing that we really, that provide cost for that are t-shirts probably and soccer balls.
sponsorships, every child gets a soccer ball in the soccer program. We found that when COVID occurred, we gave out balls at a recommendation from the state. And we kept that because it was much easier for a coach not to have to bring the balls that kids have.
So does that though gets rolled into the fee of registration?
Yeah.
But that cost, that's showing an increase on these things because it looks like baseball is up,
Yeah,
soccer, camps
baseball
are
is
up.
up because 4 years ago, when the Air League opened, we dropped our line way down because of it. We thought we would lose more numbers there, and what actually has happened is we gained gains in the younger ages. We have 6 t-ball, we have 6 baseball, and we have 2 softball, all under 9.
So that would make sense, but
Yeah.
increase more
Yeah.
officials,
That type of.
got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And camps has increased because we're working more with the coaches. All of the camps that we run in the summertime, we run with the school district. And the school district's teams will volunteer to help run the camp. And then we in turn will reimburse that team through the athletic department for the students' time and the coaches' time at running a program. So we supplement and help them run things. On the, I think it was tennis. Yeah. Minus 50. Tennis doesn't cost us anything. So that's why we took it out. We get revenue from it. But we work with 2 tennis professionals who live in town, Andrea Gorgogian, who now is married to Jason Terry, who also is a tennis professional. And they actually do our lessons for free and then donate the program back to us. So we're doing is going to put pickleball lines and help the school district with, there are pickleball lines out there already, we put them down. But we work with the school district so that when it's time to replenish that court, when that court was built 18 years ago, the town of Topsham gave up a tennis court that we had at the rec field because it was not a water table. And the LWCF money that was used to build that, we had to give money back to the state or else move it somewhere. And so the town actually donated $30,000 one year to the school district when the tennis courts were built at the high school. And that was our ownership in them. So we kind of work with the school district that uses them in the summertime.
All the programs, Pam, I know, and you've said it the last few years, is self-pay. Everything is paid for, right?
All the programs, any participation are self-pay. We do a couple of programs that are free. For instance, Halloween and things like that. We work with the other businesses and community members to run that. But primarily everything else is done self-pay. Yes. Any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, what gets printed these days? What reads printed?
We don't print a lot, I will admit that, but we do have postcards and posters and things such as that that have popped up recently. So that's, and the cost is much more expensive. So, no. Fine.
Are you doing any advertising on social media?
We have a Facebook page, our department had, I have an identity before there were government or other kinds of pages. I had an identity for the department. Now we have a Topsham Parks and Rec page and we have the Town of Topsham page, which I manage, so. Yeah, we try to catch up on all that stuff.
I do have one more, and it's just, when we send out, when you said mailings and stuff, is that mailings for programs that we do?
Email, we don't mail most anything. We might do a postcard for notices on things. If a sponsorship didn't come in or something like that, we will send them out. But all of our registration awareness and everything such as that is all done electronically. And we also work with the school district and we actually are on their newsletter so that parents know to sign up and get an account with us, so they'll get a notification of anything.
Like, the community center, the recreation department's, of course, involved in that to a degree. So if there's mailings going out, does that come out of the recreation department?
It can, just depending upon what they have left in their budget.
On that one, there were cards made from the transfer station, and in order to get people to try to commit, fill out that survey, to get completed process as equal as possible.
Right.
We did have some postcards printed that we didn't pay to mail, but they were being handed out at the transfer station, so she's taking the survey if you're.
The only mailing we do was in relation to sponsorships.
Thank you.
And I know I won't be here probably when Mark presents the capital expenditures. The only request we have this year, and it started at 15,000 because when Maine Municipal came down to inspect the facilities, our bleachers on our facilities, 3 of the sets of bleachers were no longer safe. And it's something we've needed to replace. They've been here longer than I have. So, and anyways, they, quote to replace the 3 was roughly 15,000, but it's marked down to 11 because Kathy found 4,000 that we hadn't spent previously, and we're gonna put that in there and have 15. Am I right with that one? How I understand it? Yeah. Okay.
Are those wooden?
No, they are metal. We're going to go all metal because the wooden ones are the ones we're having to get rid of.
That's on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Library next.
Yeah.
There you go. Anthony.
Hi, everyone. If you haven't had the chance to meet me yet, my name is Catherine Weber. I'm the new director over at the Topsham Public Library. Very happy to be here. I've been here since July. So excited to be here tonight to talk to you about the library and our plans for the next fiscal year. Before you on the screen is just a listing of our current board of officers. So we have Kelly Glidden, our president, Barbara Swiderski, our vice president, Phil Dostie, our secretary, and Jim Doyle, the treasurer. Then we have our at-large members, Meredith, and our student member, of course. Also new that I wanted to mention is we also have a new assistant director. So both Susan Priest and Cindy Byrne retired recently, and so we replaced Cindy Byrne with Stephen Bouchard. Very excited to have him on board. So the budget priorities for fiscal year 2026. So we recently made a change in our agreement with the town to transition our payroll to an outside service. So obviously continuing to pay for that service is important. The other thing that came up for us is unemployment. So we're gonna have to start paying that as a nonprofit to the state. We are still exempt from federal. And then we also have 15 employees now. So PMFL through the Maine system is gonna come into factor for us as well. Right now it's being paid with the employees and eventually it'll be paid by full department. The not range plan, we're currently working on that right now. So there's a big community survey that we just pushed out, trying to get some feedback. So implementing the long range plan is gonna be a big priority for us in fiscal year 26. I don't really know what that will mean as far as impacts budget wise just yet. I won't know until we have the plan in place. which we're hoping to have ready to go by the end of June to start with the new fiscal year fresh in July. The staff have also expressed an interest in doing more outreach into the community, and this is something that the initial survey results are coming back as well. So people want to see our faces more at events. They want us to be out and about. There's people who've talked about maybe coming and doing programming at other locations. So currently, like, for example, I run a book group over at the Highlands every single month. So things like that where people really want to see us getting out more. And obviously it's important for us to be out and about, interacting with the community and making sure that we're meeting all of your needs. The last big priority for us is going to be more opportunities for staff development. So because Steve and I are both new, we're still getting a handle on the staff and their priorities and trying to figure out where we can best train them. If there's anything that they're lacking. The staff are wonderful, but there's always more that people can learn in terms of cross-training or other professional opportunities. So this is just a really broad view of what the budget request is. So last year, so fiscal year 2025, we requested $887,954. This year, it's increasing to $904,700. And the increase amount overall is a little over $16,000. Most of that is coming, we are doing increases based on inflation and cost increases for things like books and other materials. Obviously, with the changes in staff, those are sort of adjusting for payroll reasons, the increase in the new payroll service, things like that. We try to keep it as lean as possible. So while we're still sort of in the process of adjusting for the new budget season and understanding what our long range plans will need. Right now we have a full-time equivalency of 10.4 employees. We recently added a new teen librarian. So she works 20 hours a week. We're very excited to have her on board. We will eventually be looking at whether 20 hours is enough for that position, but that's not something we're looking to do in fiscal year 26. We still open our normal 56 hours a week, Monday through Saturday, so feel free to come visit. As of the end of January, our door count was up 7% and material use was up 14%, and that's as of over January of last year, so the same time frame. So just a couple of fun things that I wanted to point out while I have the opportunity. So some really great things that staff are doing. Right now, we have a Thursday music and rhyme story time, which is averaging over 50 people, which is really impressive. I don't know if anyone has been to a story time lately, but Mariah is absolutely phenomenal. In my opinion, she's one of the best in the state. We're very lucky to have her. 50 people is both adults and children coming to that. It's super interactive, super fun. There's lots of high energy. People are always sticking around afterwards to talk and engage. So we're really excited to offer that to the community. With our new teen librarian, we also started involving teens. And they're averaging about 17 hours per month, which is actually really impressive. So there's a core group of them that are coming and doing things like assisting with programming, they're helping with shelving, they're giving feedback on the teen space and what they want to see the library do, which has been really helpful for our new teen librarian to make those connections in the community right away. Grab and go kits, which is something we started during COVID, continue to be insanely successful. We'll put them out and within 2 or 3 days, all of them are gone. And there's usually about 20 of them that we're giving away. And again, they go super quick and they're always different themed. Staff do a really good job at tailoring them to the particular months, which is great. We are also offering a really great podcast poetry program and online author talks that I wanted to highlight. So you'll find more information for those on our website, all those sorts of good things. And if you're looking for tech help, we recently had to expand that from 2 days to 3 because there's such a need for that in the community. And Dale is absolutely phenomenal at what he does. So this is one-on-one help with a tech expert, basically. If you come in and you're like, I need to know how to use my Kindle. I can't figure out how to sign in, send an email or download a PDF or whatever. And Dale can help you with that. So pretty exciting. And this is just a quick snapshot of how we're doing year to date as of the end of December. We're up in a lot of our categories, which is really exciting. So we're obviously paying attention to our circulation and our visits, really making sure we're in line with what people are needing. Wi-Fi and public computer use are both down. So we're trying to figure out what's going on behind that. But overall, things are looking very well for the library. And we're excited to see what the next fiscal year brings.
Have a couple. One is on the repairs is 33%. And I know this there's things wrong there,
Mhm.
so I do understand. Have you gotten estimates for these, so you know that it'll be roughly a 33%, or how did you derive at the 33?
Sure, so the 33 percentage was more just a dollar over dollar increase, so it was a $500 increase versus the percentage increase. And that was simply based off of the needs of the building that I'm currently seeing and estimating that next year we'll probably have to put more money into repairs. And this is not just actual repairs, it's also things like getting our fire extinguishers, making sure those are up to date, making sure our sprinkler system is working properly. So it's the general maintenance, not just big repairs that we're dealing with. But we did have like a boiler control panel that we've had to replace. We had a water pressure regulator that we had to replace. So all these types of things that we're seeing already that I just know are gonna continue to increase. We hit 20 years in our building, but that also means that this is about the time where things start aging out.
The other thing is, a year ago, or a couple of years ago, I think that's about a year ago, the library had run out of room for
Mhm.
offices and meeting rooms and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But with the increase of staff, where do you put them?
Yeah, so right now we actually commandeered one of our study rooms for the teen librarian because it's right around the corner from the teen room. We had been housing her in the study room as an interim sort of thing, but we had to move her to the study room. Our new gallery coordinator, we're working with the Friends to figure out some closet space, things like that. And then we're just trying to find storage. We're buying shelving units if we need them. Carts have been another big one for us. But it is a little bit tricky and we're definitely still running up against a lot of those space issues. But we're able to offset a little bit of it based on hours that people are working.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
You get a little bit of revenue from, renting the space, I imagine, and where does that reflect in in your numbers?
So it probably wouldn't be in the numbers before you unless the all sources budget is listed. So this is actually something that goes directly back to the library because it's in one of our budget lines on the library side, not the town side.
And what's in the revenue lines?
A variety of things. So we did ugly sweater ornaments. We've done like create your own Valentine for your sweetheart. I'm trying to remember what else they've done. It's usually like little painting kits, things like that, stained glass.
And then lastly, where is your PNFL reflected?
That is included in the TPL insurance line.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is a change.
It is.
Not just for me.
For a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Does the teen librarian work only with teens? And is that a professional classification or?
Mhm. So the teen librarian is a professional classification similar to adult services or children's librarian, reference librarian, things like that. She doesn't work only with teens. None of our staff really work with any one age group because she does do time at the desk and time out in the community where she's interacting with parents and teachers and other librarians. But her main focus is on assisting teens with their informational needs within the building.
And that's a new position or this person is filling a space that already existed?
It's a new position. Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
I just have some concerns. I just want to express them because you're talking about more outreach and spending more time out in the community. Do you have volunteers that can do that? And then the second part of my question is this 904,700 of the town's percentage of your budget, the 85%, and not including the extra 15% that you put in? So I just take a look at the numbers and I go, okay, the recreation department runs their entire thing for $395,497, and you're at $904,700. And they're pie in the sky things like all these things that you want to do are just going to keep adding, and we have to pay 85%. I'm just thinking, at what point are some things not really the responsibility of the library, and would they fall in parks and recreation? And the last question I had on that.
Okay, so the 904,700 is the 85% that is in our MOU that we have with the town. And it's actually a little bit less based on the current budget that I have prepared. I think it's closer to like 83%. And you'll notice the majority of our cost is actually in staffing. So we do have a lot of really long-term staff, and I mean like people who've been there for 8 or more years. And because they've been there for 8 or more years, they have a lot of longevity. And it's just where they are sort of on the pay scale. We are able to pare that back a little. Obviously, Steve and I are brand new, so our pay is a little bit less than what Cindy and Susan are making. But we want to maintain our staffing level, and it's very important to us that staff are happy and they want to stay around. And so it's important for us to have parity with, standards in the community, but not only the library community, but what, municipal employees are making. It's important to sort of make sure we're paying people adequately. The outreach can be done by volunteers, but it will be done by library staff. This is something that sort of was on hold during COVID. So it's something that staff were used to be doing and now want to see an increase in doing because they're seeing an increased need in the community for people who aren't able to make it to the library. We want to be able to make the library come to them. And this isn't just the librarians, it could be me. Like I already go out in the community and I'm doing things. I went to the trunk or treat with our children's librarian, and that's something that's important for me personally to be able to be doing too. And as a salaried employee, I have a lot of flexibility to do stuff off hours, right? So it doesn't just have to be when I'm in the library and I'm needed there. I can be doing things outside of typical business hours. And that's true of other library employees as well.
You referenced the survey that you sent out, and you're starting to get survey questions back. One of the questions on the survey, I looked at it today, it just concerned me because one of the questions was, do you think we need more staff? That just seemed a little self-serving. There was no place to put no or yes. It was only if you wanted to check it. And so I'm just concerned that we're building this community, that the library is building the need for more staff and bigger programs and bigger things. And I'm just saying, we are, this is a huge expense in our budget, other than the school department. And so, I just want us to remember that our taxpayers pay for all this every time it goes up. And so I just wanted to go stop today.
Sure. So just to clarify one point from the survey, the question was not specifically about staff. It was asking what people thought we should be focusing on, and more staff was one of the options that they could select. So it wasn't a yes or no, it was one of a host of options.
Right, that was my complaint, that there were a yes or no, when people could have said no. You could only check things that you wanted more of. There was no place to say, I want this or don't want this, I want this, I don't want this. It was all like, it was like skewed to be in your favor,
Well, so the survey is based off of staff, as well as the board and our priorities, and sort of gearing it towards things that we're seeing in libraries, not only in the state, but outside of the state. And we do have a really positive outlook from the community about the library. Like there's people coming in and using the library, and we have data to back that up. And so if more people continue to use the library and more people are wanting more and more books and more programming, right, then that sort of speaks to, well, the library is fulfilling that need. Right, and so like if we're going to be needing to fulfill that need, we want to know if that's something people want us to do. So that was the point of the question.
Right, and the questions were things like, do you want us to have concerts on the site, and all kinds of other things. At what point are those expenses something that we don't really need?
So a lot of
just because someone wants it doesn't mean we really need it in a library category.
Yes.
Number one, my granddaughter thoroughly enjoys the library, and I think she's taking advantage of the team.
Excellent.
Two, I think at this point in time, we can really consider the library more of a community center, and to focus on that definition of a library only, I think is what people excited. And when you look at it being more of a community center and putting so much more out into the community than just a library, I think the funds are well worth it, in my opinion. Not that I have a question.
So I guess I'd like to understand, because I do understand where Anne's coming from, and I somewhat agree with that, because we hear from our community members also about taxes and keeping the taxes down. And so what kind of things in the community are you thinking that has to be done outside of the library premises?
So it's not necessarily anything that has to be done, it's things that people are asking for, and they're asking for things like home delivery of books. Could be something that people are going to do, which could be done by volunteers. People are asking for like book groups in their local communities or assisted living centers. We've had some feedback from like the teens that are coming in being like, I wish like more of my friends knew about the services. Can you come talk to the library? So it's partnerships with the school. That's another big category for us. So it's not necessarily going out and like posting a music program at another location outside the building. It's more just getting out into the community and letting the community know what we can offer and being able to like be present at like things like trunk or treat or things like National Night Out or other things that the town is already doing. So it's not necessarily creating our own pockets, it's also being a part of current things that's going on.
I do appreciate that, and I know this is your first time here with us, so but I guess what I just wanna say is, every time we take somebody out of the library building itself, then that has to be backfilled some other way. And so, I just, I hear Ian saying, it's not that we want to discourage filling those needs, but we're also very practical, I guess, and when it comes down to it, every penny is accounted for, so I'm kind of with her on that one, I guess, so I appreciated the question.
I have a couple more.
Everybody, you mind?
Oh, go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm sorry, he hasn't been here for a while.
Oh, that's true.
This is called vacation bill, the first time in 7 years, and my generation isn't gonna get retired, so I'm gonna take it when I can.
Wow.
Let's see,
Wow.
13%. I think I saw on the slide that was the attendance that went down from last year, is that correct? Well, pretty quick.
13%.
If you go back one slide, I think it's on there. 13.5% new patrons year over year.
So new patrons is people who have been added. This is not necessarily reflective of total active patrons, which is the number further down.
Yeah, understood. There was just a comment earlier about how more and more people are signing up. And
So this is 1 month. This is just the month of December,
Okay.
year from year, versus the year to date is actually up by 1%.
Gotcha. There was another point about our door count. Does that include just people using the library traditional services like circulation and reference, or does it include the meeting room as well?
It includes the meeting room and any programs that are hosted in that space.
Okay. You had mentioned parity in positions with town staff. What are you comparing positions to now with other municipal positions?
So I don't have the list in front of me, but when there was an increase, I think it was about 10 years ago, the parity that was created by my predecessor that basically looked at the job duties of various town employees, matched them up with the job duties of various library employees, and basically created a pay scale based on that model. Which is not uncommon in relationships between towns and libraries. I myself am coming from a union library, where all of our pay was exactly in parity with the city. And it's based on job duty. And yes, while we understand that librarians aren't doing the exact same work as like a clerk here in the town building, there is a lot of crossover and trainable skills that happen in each location. Just like my job is not exactly the same as their town department head, but there is a lot of things that are in common. We're both dealing with a lot of the same sort of things. So that's what I mean by parity. It's already happening, and it's something that I think is important to continue maintaining for the longevity of staff.
I work in circulation, familiar with the skills. It's just.
Could you speak up?
Certainly. I've worked in circulation. I'm familiar with the skills. I'm just kind of curious how that comparison, Susan must have done something to make an accurate comparison for something that's been in place for this long. I'd be curious to see what that is at some point. Because there are overlapping skills, computer use, typing. But I can't say that when I was a circulation attendant, I can't say I have anywhere near the skills of someone in the clerk's office, for instance. And I think that's sort of the most comparable position.
Sure, but we have other positions than circulation clerks. I myself possess a master's degree, and there's a lot of other librarians. There's at least 4 other librarians in the building that possess master's degree and have a higher level of skill.
It's because you have to.
In terms of, I'm sorry?
It's because you have a job.
It's technically not a requirement for directors, but it is
Right.
preferred to understand the profession to the best of our ability. Similar to like an adult services librarian, it's not always a requirement. But you have to have years of service and experience if you don't have the education. And the reason for that is because working in a library isn't necessarily the same as other jobs, because we do have codes of ethic that apply just to libraries like other jobs do as well, right? So it is a skill set. It's not just a random assortment of people in a building doing various tasks. Like there is education and there is skill behind it.
No, I'm not gonna argue that point. The thing that really gets me with all of these discussions is not just CCAP, and this happens every single year, we don't always get to see the full picture. Especially with revenue, I mean, and you've been working with the library, you still don't know what the revenue is, correct?
I don't have it in this report.
But you do.
It's here. It takes
The
on
table
the,
after.
yeah,
Oh, it's after?
yeah,
Next page.
31, I know.
Oh, all the revenue in the beginning of the booklet and then this is.
Well, and the reason for that is they are a separate nonprofit, they're not a town department.
Okay.
So it doesn't really mix in, Captain's not the one collecting the revenue, it comes separate.
Oh, yeah. Man, you know, getting older, that's really small. So we make sure both.
If you looked at it online, you will see it at the little pad. I do have a request to make a switch buffer there. I throw it Mark under the bus right this time. Thought he was saving on him, so give him a break.
While everyone's looking at that, I would like to make a comment and echo something that Matt was talking about. When it does come to salaries and trying to align with the town, it's a separate entity, it's not a town entity. The town doesn't necessarily pay for the employees, you guys are now paying for your own employees. And I think it's really challenging to compare a librarian to a police officer, a firefighter, a public works director, an assessor, a code enforcement officer. All of these skill sets are very unique and they're very different. And even when we do town assessing of salaries, we're not comparing us to the library or cross department. We're comparing firefighters to firefighters in the area. We're comparing police to police in the area, code enforcement officers to the same.
They're not doing that. I mean, I worked with Susan a little bit on what she was doing, but it was basically, it was our operations, smart, human, all right. Basically, it was operations. When you look at it, we've got clerks, you've got administrative assistants, you've got
Right, so I mean, I guess maybe my lack of clarity comes from just the lack of information, and that might be helpful to have.
Since I was here when all of that went down, I have to say that I think they did an extremely good job trying to do a nice comparison between the positions here and the library. It wasn't, well, they were like this, it's like how compatible, how close are they? In order, because the library had sat there for a number of years without asking for any pay increase, which they shouldn't have done. But it was at a point when they should really needed to get up to speed so they could keep qualified people. So, and that was a good basis on which to do it, to try and do some kind of comparison comparable to what is happening here within City Hall. So I think they did a good job. I mean, you're right, it's not this, but it was the best we could do at the time, and I think it was very good.
I was here, oh, go ahead.
Did you say that they were paying for the payroll?
It's this year it switched, we're not paying for the library's payroll anymore.
It's the payroll service.
The service.
Service, yeah,
But
it's not coming
payroll-
under the town.
But we pay 85% of the payroll for it.
You pay 85% of the total budget.
Total.
Yeah, if you look under here, the budget now is, they said $16,000 increase and about $5,500 and $4,100. So $95 or $9,600 of that 16,000 is in payroll services and unemployment. Because they have to take that on this year.
What is your, do you have the total number for the revenue, your endowments, the interest, all that stuff? Do you have that number for us?
I don't have that number on hand, unfortunately, but the endowment, when I say the number out loud, it's gonna sound like a big number, but the reality is we're only pulling down a certain amount so
I
that we can leave
understand.
a lot in.
Right. So would you anticipate with the book sales and everything else that's come in, there's an income to the library from outside funds of, let's say, 50,000?
I don't have the number offhand. I'd be happy to provide what we currently
I'd like to
have,
see that.
but I don't wanna misspeak a number.
Right, sure.
Can it be on
Looks
that
like,
table?
it looks like
Uh-huh.
on page 31.
On that table on page 31, it's $170,000, 438.
The endowment is 20,000.
And this is an estimate, so none of the.
Slash 42,200.
So that budget is also not final, so like the board has not voted upon it. And that's an estimate based off of what we have currently.
Is the approach to just use what the endowment pulls off as far as earnings for the year, or are you taking some principal as well?
No, it's to just use the earnings. We can dip into principal if things occur, or if there's specific gifts that were given in memorial donations, things like that. We do try to spend them in the current fiscal year as much as possible.
Are you seeing a growth in that principal on a year to year, or is it flat?
There's usually some growth, but again, I don't know offhand what that number is.
Excuse me, Kevin.
Yes.
So to reiterate, the endowment is 170,000, and sorry, I can't read it. And you said your withdrawal was 20 or 40,000?
No, that's their total revenue was 170,000.
Oh, okay.
And that comes from,
Individuals, business sponsor, endowment, memorial contributions, designated restricted, individual business contribution, grants, contributed support, transfer from endowment, and miscellaneous revenue. Those are the items that would total $173,438. And that's their, assuming they're 15% that they put towards the budget.
Can someone here please help me understand among the select persons, what is the issue here? It's unclear to me what the issue is you're trying to raise.
I don't think it's one issue in particular. It's the fact that this is an organization that is not a town department, but likes to pick and choose the pieces of the town department that will benefit them. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I've worked in a library before. I love it. I love public libraries. We need them very badly. But the setup that we have here has been a constant point of contention for as long as I've been on this board. And it's not Catherine. Catherine's just coming into the fire here.
No, it has been, yeah.
It's been, there's a lot of wanting to have cake and eat it too. And until we're able to either fully integrate or fully split apart, I think we're going to continue to run into this issue every year, just because we don't have a full picture of what's going on all the time. There's an increase every year. We're talking about new staff. 2 years ago, we lost one of the conference rooms because we had to add another director's office. So like a lot of the services that we're talking about as a community center, those are going away, and they're being replaced by staff offices and other things. Believe me, I wish it were a community center. That would save us a lot of other trouble in another discussion.
can I also say that I don't see us combining? Because if we did that, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd leave your ability to solicit contributions as a 501c3. That would go out the window. So a lot of what we're seeing here will disappear if they become part of the town. So I don't think that's the direction we want.
And then the town would also be responsible for 100%.
Yes, so.
And it would be a lot more justifiable, I think, in terms of staff adjustments, things like that, if they were part of town. And we wouldn't be running into these issues every year.
To clarify, the particular conference room issue that you raised is one that we are running up against, and it is something that we're trying to rectify. Steve and I have been trying to deal with that. The reason that the offices were changed was not only due to COVID, but it was because we did receive a large contribution from a community member. And one of the biggest reasons that she stated is because she loved our staff. And she loved coming into the library, and she loved interacting with the staff, and that was one of the best parts of her day. And as a result, she left us a significant contribution and said that she wanted a good portion of it to be used towards staff, to retaining staff, to making sure that staff were happy. That's how we got a staff room. That's how we got the new director's office. Plus it was COVID and they needed to spread out offices where people were literally sharing desks, working on top of one another, things of that nature.
That's my opinion. Everybody else has an opinion?
Kind of like when you talk about MSAD 75 and how we don't really have any control over their budget. The town approves it, we've got to pay. And if there's not enough money, we have to raise taxes for that to be paid. It's similar with the library. It's a little less money, but it's the same thing. They give us a budget that they give us the budget and then, we're expected to pay 85% of whatever that budget is. And they're just going to keep expanding and expanding and expanding, which sounds really wonderful. But our taxpayers are paying for all these programs and all of the outreach and all of the other things that are happening when the budget's increased for those programs. And so I'm just saying, we have, you know, I was voted in to make sure that I'm representing everyone in this community, not just the people who love to go to the library. There are people who never go to the library, and their taxes are going up and up.
Yeah, we're paying 85% of it. Is there 85% of the citizens of this town utilizing that library?
You say that for anything though.
I don't know.
Yeah. We don't have to get into that kind of argument, Marie.
What kind of
And
town do you
and I
want?
have no contention with it, I just merely have questions. You know, it's more about gaining perspective, so it's really, just from my own perspective, I don't know, and you don't know what you don't know until you ask the question and find out. So, I mean, for me, it's merely a fact-finding mission.
Well, first of all, I love our library in this sense. But what I hear, and I support the library, the people in it. I've taken, I was a surrogate for a little girl, so I would take her every Wednesday. So I know what you're talking about, the person that reads and does the music, and it was wonderful. And I think that's great for kids. The thing is, when you do surveys and stuff and you ask, everybody's gonna want something. And we can't be something to everybody. And what I hear is there's more and more and more programs. So therefore, we have to hire more people. And I think there's a limit to what the library can do, even though I enjoy it, I like it. If I want a special book, I'll go in, and I agree, the staff is wonderful. But how far do we keep going? It's a $900,000 budget, and I agree with Ann. Everything's nice and everything services some people, but not all people. And it depends on whether you're sitting with probably a $50,000 income or $100,000 income is where your attitude. Mine's neither, so just sort of throw it in, but.
I have a question too. Are people purposely being kept out of the library? Is there anybody here? No, of course not. It's, if people don't want to go to the library and if they don't want to increase the quality of life in their town, then they have every right to do that. But I come from away. Let's get that straight. And I'm an educator. That's what I did all my life. At some pretty impressive places, I might add. And I don't see people from Maine coming to these places. Why? Because you're isolated and you're not willing to provide the kind of services that will attract people to these communities. That's what's happening. And I see it all over the country, a diminishment in literacy, in ability to function. You're losing your scientists, you're losing your MDs, you're losing your educators, because you think that paying a couple of percentage points in taxes is more important to you. And I see this all the time in Maine. That's driving me nuts. This is more important to you than providing for a decent quality of life for your next generation. And it's very upsetting to me to listen to this stuff. You know, you're not paying tens of thousands of dollars more, and you got a wonderful facility here, and you need to have it if you expect to be a literate culture and a literate place to live. And that's why you haven't. I see what's going on over at Maine Health. The medical service here, I wouldn't send my laboratory rat to it. If you want to save your lives here, if you want to be well, you've got to go to Boston. That's a fact, or at least, very least, to Portland. And this is all because it's hard to attract people here who want to have their kids well educated, who want to have an opportunity to do this. And it's very frustrating. I'll quit the committee if you don't want me here. That's not a problem. No. But the point is that I see this happening in every way. And it's very disturbing. I'm an old man. It doesn't matter, man. I'm 86. But you're going to pay a very heavy price, your community, if you don't realize what the hell is going on.
I appreciate your input, and I think what you say is valid. I mean, I really do. The thing that people don't realize is if someone's living on Social Security of $1,200 a month,
Right.
and their tax rates, mine is over $9,000.
Then you ought to give tax breaks to people who need it.
Well,
That's what a lot of communities do. Even where I moved from, which is the deep south, and they do a lot better. In all honesty, the only difference what I see between places like Maine and some of the other states like Mississippi, Alabama, places like that is the accent. You want to live like that? I don't think so.
Well,
I certainly don't.
May I say, in response to Ruth's thing about not everybody uses the library and why does everybody have to pay? Not everybody makes use of the fire department. Not everybody has to call on the police department. Not everybody has to do our probate, but we still have to pay.
But I
for it.
didn't say that.
No.
That's what I heard.
Start timer.
That's what I heard.
That isn't what I said.
Okay. that's what I
Marie,
heard.
somebody else did the figures at 85%.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't me. I am questioning
Okay,
things,
well,
yes.
I heard that. I thought it came
Yeah,
from you. My
no,
apologies.
I did,
But
okay,
that is
and I
what
accept
heard
that.
From something.
So,
And I just disagree with that statement, but just because you don't believe it, you shouldn't pay for it.
so I truthfully think, and, Maine's a beautiful state and it has a lot of things to offer. It has culture. It's come a long way. I've lived here all my life. Libraries are a part of that. Schools are a part of that. Parents are a part of that to help educate their children. And teachers have a responsibility. All of us as a community, we have a responsibility for our kids and our culture. I don't think anybody's debating that, but there comes a point in finances.
Rich, was your point about not being everything to everyone,
Right.
right? Yeah, so that's not the intention. You know, I understand that from a
Right.
practical standpoint, we can't be everything to everyone. We do our best to provide people with what they need, in particular, people who aren't able to access those resources anywhere else.
Right.
In particular, you know, third places, which are safe places where you can be without having to pay something, are disappearing very rapidly.
Right.
If for nothing else, libraries are a place to do that, but it's also a place to connect with your community,
Well, the
right?
connection's
So
important.
that's
Yes.
very important, and that's one of the number one things we see, so it's not just the books and the checkouts, it's definitely the community. We know we can't be everything for everyone, but we're doing our best to provide something for everyone.
I don't wanna kill a dead bird or hit a dead bird or whatever you're saying is. I just wanna respond to Dawn because I'm in education too, and we are really speaking from privilege because we have the money to pay our taxes.
That's right.
And we have the money to increase, if it goes up 1 or 2%, we're gonna be okay. My family's gonna be okay. But there are a lot of people who aren't okay. And I guess that's what we're just trying to echo back to say, you know, it's all well and good for us to have all the bells and whistles, but when push comes to shove, we have families in our community that don't have the ability to help pay for that. And so it just adds the burden to a burden. And so it's not that we don't think it's all good. I mean, we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been supporting it for the last several years, right? So that's all.
Not to conflate two things.
That's
And
well said.
We'll go for it.
and maybe I don't wanna start a new Firestone.
Really?
So.
But one of the things that came up during the focus sessions we had about the community center a year ago was that there was a lot of people saying that they'd like more things for teens to do, say after school and stuff. And there were people saying they'd like more things for elders to do. And then there's a discussion, ballot so, can the town afford the staff to do all these things? One of the ways is we're trying to brainstorm and try to find ways to make things work. The thought is that the library already has a teen librarian. Maybe the town doesn't add to its rec department to have teen programming in the afternoons. Maybe it's, the town has this building that's got space, but we partner with the library for some of the teen stuff. So we're adding a new staff member. We partner with People Plus for the adult yoga classes or something, so that we're not. So I think there's creative ways we can stretch our resources by working things together. Not saying we have to have a community center, not saying it's decided. I'm just saying that the town staff has all these things in mind, and I know the library does too, because Catherine and I have had these discussions. There's probably ways that we can use our resources effectively by partnering to accomplish some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Because we definitely have a lean town staff, and to be honest, I think if the town was running the library, there wouldn't be as many employees there, just because if you look at our clerk's office, how few employees we have. But if we decide to go down the road of a community center, I think we can use the strengths of the library as having some of these people. And I'm not saying we need to have more people, but we can use some of the ones that are there to partner to help do some of the programs. And it could get maybe a more cost effective way than adding staff to a rec department. A lot of ifs, no decisions have been made, and there's gonna be a lot of decisions made in the future, but it's just some of things worth thinking about to try to find ways to make things work out.
So we beaten up enough? Welcome to Town.
I'd say, well, welcome to the finance committee.
Actually, we were easier on you than we were on Susan.
A few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like one more comment too. I these are the avenues in these meetings that I personally hold dear because we can have tough conversations.
Right.
I think, and I personally feel this way, I think we all need to talk about every perspective possible. The money is part of the issue. The love for the library is one of the things that we're trying to fight for and save. If we don't talk about those things and if we don't address them, whether we're firmly in belief of that or if we're fact finding or we're trying to find out information, we lack the ability to make the best decision possible for the people that we serve. And as a select board person, we are voted in as the overseers of the poor. And in our community, we are not an affluent community at whole. We're not a wealthy community, despite what some people may think. We do have a lot of people that fall below that poverty line. Our median income in this town is well below a livable wage. So those are things that do concern me on the select board because we get it all the time. We do see families with children that don't go to the library because they're thinking with their wallets. Let's be honest. Everybody in a certain regard is thinking with wallets before they think of the benefit to what we can offer. So these items and these things all have to be addressed. And I appreciate these conversations that we all have, given our own diverse backgrounds and including that we disagree in some things. And I would just remind us all, it's okay to disagree, but we still have to have the conversation. We're not yelling at each other. We're not bickering, we're not screaming, but we do need to have that conversation. And that's something that I do feel is lacking overall just in politics in general. And Topsham is a small enough community to where we can get those things out and still shake hands and go have a beer afterwards. And this is merely the part of this conversation that we're having now is I do think we agree. We all love the library. We all love the benefits of the library. And from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of great programming for the library. Simultaneously, the fact still remains. There's an exorbitant cost to the library. And it's not connected directly to the town of Topsham. So these are the contentions that we have to serve with, and we have to find ways to mitigate some of these obstacles that we have on our side and some of the wants and desires of the town and the community at large. So again, I appreciate this. I think this has been a very good conversation, and I think there's going to be more to come.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this so just because I'm procedurally, do you all have suggestions or is this like you talk about it after and then you have suggestions?
Procedurally, they're gonna meet separately, select board and finance committee, they come up with their ideas, then they get together and they may ask questions along the way, or anyone. Then they get together in late March and have what they call a reconciliation meeting. And someone may say, I recommend that we cut this out of here from finance committee, and the select board says we concur or we don't. So
this is not that.
that's
Okay.
not that.
If I understand, doesn't the budget have to be approved in the final analysis by the town at a town meeting? So the town does have the right and has the opportunity to say what it is they want. What are we presented? Do we present it? Do you present it to the people from all economic aspects can make a vote, can have a vote, can have their say on this?
It's all 22 people who show up.
Well,
That's the problem with how things are presented, isn't it?
Well, it depends. If you go for a zoning change or you go for a special, like a special town meeting or something.
Paving a parking lot with.
Right, a
Yeah,
parking
yeah.
lot or anything, people are gonna come out of the woodwork. If their taxes, I've seen a tax revolt in this town in 1992. It was big, it was awful, it was brutal. And of course, I spearheaded it, but but we did because the valuation and the prices kept going up. Inflation, the markets on the houses were dropping. Eventually, they will again. It's a cycle. And when that happens, we had military towns, they were trying to sell their houses and move out of here. They couldn't. And the assessment from the town was saying, well, this is what you can get for your house. So we're assessing, which is totally illegal to do, for instance. So anyway, there has been revolts and there has been when things go too far and taxes go up too much. And when the town takes or the assessment takes, and our assessor, we love him, but a big piece of land they have no idea whether the soil tests or the survey is right or anything like that. And they say every lot is worth 35,000 and there's 15 lots on that property. And they assess you on that part. People should come out of the woodwork. But those are the kind of things. So there has been, so the board of selectmen are the keepers and to keep those things down. But we do have needs and we have a beautiful town. We have a lovely building. We built the garage, we've done the police station, we've done many, many things. And it's a lovely community. I don't want to live anywhere else. And the library has, I've seen it go from the little house here on Pleasant Street to a nice place they made do with up on the annex and then raise money to do this one. So we've seen the whole phase. And I'm very proud of my town, the way it is, and it's no way illiterate.
I have one recommendation.
Sure.
I think part of this is all about marketing. And I think it's demonstrating that it's being bought. And I mean, I just calculated out, if you take your budget, divide by the number of people in town, it's basically like $250 a household. How many hardback books can you buy for $250?
You can't buy any hardcover books with $2.50.
No. A hardcover, just a novel, you know.
So the average cost of a hardcover novel is about $30.
And if it's $250, I mean, you're talking about 7 books. So if you buy hardcover books, go to the library, you save that money.
Yep, and that is a calculation that everyone can do themselves, which is great because the Maine State Library has what's called the library use calculator available. It's also a calculation that I provided when I did my end of budget season presentation for fiscal year 24. That basically broke down that number as well. But yeah, the value for what is paid in is very, very good for what you get out of the library, for sure. But I take your point about marketing, but it is.
You should have that calculator on your website.
Sure.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah.
I mean, your budget has to be approved by your own finance committee, doesn't it? You have
Yeah,
your own
so the
finance
next
committee.
phase, so like the 85% that comes to you all has to be approved by this group. Then my budget goes to my finance committee and then it goes to my board based on their recommendations. And then there's a whole separate budget that the Friends do because that's a separate organization that does their own thing that supports the library, but it's nothing, like we don't have any control over them, so to speak. And
But
then
they're
that goes
friends.
into it. They are friends. And the Friends programming, the Friends support all of our programming. And so like, if you have a program that has a cost, not to you all, but to the library, if we're paying for a program or a presentation and we're paying for a craft, whatever the case may be, it's all coming from the Friends. So we're very grateful to have them. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a comment though. The goals of this town, when I sat over there at that desk, it's been this way since I've been involved in town, it's always, how do we draw more younger couples in with children? Look at the man, so it's such, you know, they want facilities for their kids, they want libraries, they want rec departments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the last couple of years, the housing market has pretty much took care of that in that regard, but it was always been a balancing act trying to get younger couples with children or young families into the town by supplying them with what they wanted or what they needed or what nice to have. I started running this tangent a little bit. I started running numbers last night based on the Harriman report for the community center, and to say that they're eye watering is an understatement. But there's a demand for it. Now, I'm not advocating for it, but I'm just saying, I guess if the community center starts trending to, looks like maybe we're going to go through with this, I think this discussion, along with any other ones, is going to be pretty mellow compared to what it'd be.
Right, exactly.
Because of the costs, because I ran some projections, very, very rough as far as what the cost of the community center would do to the mill rate alone. You know, it's literally one, you know, $1 a year to that. That's just a real scrape the surface. You know, by the Harriman report, it's like $500,000 a year for operational costs. I got to read into it more, but it's just like, this is crazy. But anyway, my point is, it's unfortunately not going to get better. It's going to get worse if we have that. So, and With that, welcome to Topsham.
And you'll do it.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate the questions. And if there's any other questions that you think of after the fact, you can of course ask Mark and Kathy. They'll make sure they get to me. You can also just email me directly and I'll make sure to include them back on my response. So thank you all. Sure.
Do you know, a breakdown of the demographics of the visitors to your library? I.e., are they mostly families with young children? Are they mostly retirees? Who are we seeing mostly go, and is there a way to get a breakdown of that?
So we don't have demographic information. It's not something we track. The best I could do is a breakdown between adult cards versus versus child cards. That's the only designation that we have. And that would just tell you who's actually physically using their cards, either online or in the building. It wouldn't necessarily tell you who's walking through the doors.
I think that's a very good point. Not that, obviously, it probably would be a violation of privacy to ask those questions, but you said something earlier that I thought was, it's head scratching when you said that, and I'd like to know where the veracity of this is, that people who are, economically vulnerable are not using the library. You say, I don't understand why that would be. Do you have anything backing that up, or are you just making a blanket statement?
I'm referring to the families that don't get out. Parents go to work, they come home, and that's what they do. The kids go to school, they come home, and that's what they do. There is data that would back that. I could from the top of my head, I can't cite that, but I can definitely pull that out. But those are the families that aren't going out to eat. Those are the families that aren't going to the movies. Those are the families, they just don't, it's not part of that culture of that demographic in generalities of speaking. But there is data to back behind that. And it would be the same. I do think kids, no matter what, are going to the library through their schools.
Right.
But I think when you're talking about a poverty line, it's typically correlated very highly to a low education. And to that regard, you're also thinking that the value of education is also probably pretty low. That's being instilled in their children and being passed on, knowing that about 98% of people stay in the demographic that they were born into. And it's very hard to get out of that. So we learn these behaviors from our parents, and it's passed down through the generations. I'm one of those kids that broke free of that demographic, so I know how hard that is. But at the same rate, I do believe that that's probably true to this town.
I understand what you're saying about using discretionary spending, not being able to use discretionary spending, but you had correlated it with not using the library. You'd said, if it's a monetary issue, they're not using the library. And I didn't understand where, if they're already, the library is free, in essence, I get it, that it's taxes, but why that would be related to a monetary hindrance.
Let me clarify that and backtrack. Let me retract that statement from the monetary side.
Understood. Okay.
I think it's more about what I was just talking about with the demographic of the people and the willingness to go out or the ability to go out, because in their mind, everything costs money. And to drive to the library costs money. To go anywhere and do anything costs money. And when you're in a state of poverty, and I can speak from personal experience when I was growing up, you don't do anything. You just go home and you go play in the woods with sticks because that's what you have. And I feel like that's still a trend that happens with that lower income level. And I would assume, and it's an assumption on my part, that would take place with the library as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing, when that tax revolt, when they said only 100 people come out, well over 1,000 came that night, we had to find another space. So you give them something to say that's gonna affect their pocketbook, and you get people wound up about it and knowing it's gonna do. Yeah, I do too. And then,
Perceived value.
right, that's right. And there wasn't. And so people came out and boy, things changed. Money went back to everybody in this town. So I was proud of it.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yes, and thank
Five
you.
minute break.
Okay, 5 minute break and we'll wrap up. That is assisted to reconvene. So we're gonna go to page, go through the remaining departments or sections of the budget. Page 23 is the facilities maintenance. This one, we have 2 custodians right now. We've got Annette Rushman and Daniel Elliott. And between the 2 of them, they take care of the library, this building, public safety building, and they do the bathrooms and things in public works. The only place they don't get to is what they don't do is the bathrooms at the transfer station.
25 hours at the library, right?
Approximately, I can't remember, it's 220 and 25.
Do not bring up the library again tonight.
So,
We're still talking about library, that's great.
No.
If you want one part.
so overall in facilities, we have a 1% reduction in the budget. The area in there that we've been really trying to focus on is, I mentioned the first night, that a lot of our contracted services, the contracts go up somewhere between 3 and 6% a year. But we've been looking at them and trying to find ways to save money on them. One way we were able to save some money for next year in the contracted services is we put it out to both companies that were servicing the generators. Because the new one was coming from Jordan Milton and the old one was coming from Cummings. We asked both of them what they cost to service both, and Cummings gave us a better price to do both of them. So that'll save us a little money. We also, I was getting a little frustrated with every time I turned around, especially in July and August, we get the bill from the company doing our lawn care. So not the mowing, but the one putting fertilizer on and whatever else they put on. And then we looked at it and we're paying over $10,000 a year. We're doing the buildings here as well as the library. So Dennis reached out, looked for RFPs from our current company and a couple others, and Willie C. and Sons in Topsham, we feel it's gonna be about 6,000 instead of 10. And they're gonna give us, we think, better service. The only thing they're not gonna do is, this current company was doing pest control too, but we haven't seen any pests. So, I'll probably find out. Maybe I'll find out.
Because it was working. Yeah.
But I'm not so sure it's because they would have been here otherwise. So if we have an issue, we can get the little tracks, but a lot of it seems like it's a scam. They put these little black things out and never seem to catch anything. And Jeff's been good about picking up crumbs, so I don't so that's the kind of stuff we're doing. So although that line is increasing by 6%, it would have been more if we weren't trying to find ways to get more out of our contractors.
I got a question.
Sure.
Why don't you just pave it all over, then you won't have to worry about it every time.
Because then we might have issues with too much impermeable surface on the town. So we want to keep it clean. So unless there's any other questions on facilities maintenance, I'll move on from there. So the next line is insurance. And if you look at the overall total, you're probably like, what the heck's going on with our insurance rates? If you look, let's focus on the actual insurance first. So the lines that are insurance, you'll find the one that increases the most is our police liability insurance. So all of our insurance we get from the Maine Municipal Association of the various types. Unfortunately, people are suing police more and more. So that's part of the reason that increased. So the big thing that's changed in there, which is the last line, the payroll adjustment one that went from 35,000 to 300. That's the one I referenced on the first night. That's where we put the money to deal with for our union negotiations. So we've got something to pay the increases we expect. That isn't just union negotiations. There's also money in there that would go to adjusting some of the salaries of our non-union people. For instance, if we end up raising police officers' pay, we're gonna maybe be too close to the lieutenant and the chief, so we need to address their pay as well and things. So that's, for the most part, it's money for the union contracts, but it could be some non-union people that get fixed out of there too. So we would include money in the town meeting warrant that allows us to shift that money to any department necessary. Because as you know, our articles are organized, like public safety is an article, public works is one. So if this money is in the general government part, so if, say, a chunk of this is paying for police raises, we need to be able to move it to the police budget later, otherwise we'd have to have a second town meeting with the police overrun it. And any questions on these sections? Yes.
Mark, first of all, just a comment, I was thrilled to hear Kathy say the other night we were using the Maine Municipal Association, so we have this buying power of all the municipalities in the state. However, we have lots of different kinds of insurance here. We have employee benefits type insurance here, workers' comp, property and casualty, liability insurance, all of that. I wonder if there are any opportunities here that we could look into in the commercial market or other types of organizations that we might have access to that have buying power to get us better rates on some of the certain coverages. So
We have, I'll let Kathy
have
answer
you
that.
done that?
Well,
I guess it's a question.
Well, Kathy thinks, I'll say something. We had. I'll say something without thinking. We've had a company the past month that's approached us and said they've saved some other towns significantly on their workers' comp. They've asked to give us a quote and talk to us about it. Haven't followed up on it yet because we're this. The other, and we want to do some research before we jump, only because they give us good service. And we have had some complex cases with them in the past. And so we've got one that's going to litigation right now with a former town employee. So sometimes it's hard to jump ship in the middle. But with that said, there's certainly nothing wrong with looking at other stuff, and that's something we can do more of. Kathy, I don't know if you've had experience from other places you've worked or using other companies.
Yeah, you can actually do, when I worked in Raymond, we did a private insurance company for our PNC and automotive and, sergeants and officers and that, your basic PNC package, the whole thing. You can go to private, private health insurance, you can go to a health insurance, agency, and they'll look at all the different companies for you and give you quotes. You can do that. I don't know that it would be worthwhile to do that. When I worked in Portland, obviously, for the most part, they were self-insured, but they also, paid. When I worked there, we paid Anthem to administer it, even though the choices of what was covered and what was not covered remained with the city. They did administer it so that it felt to the employees like a regular health insurance. So yes, it's something we can do. I don't know if we want to do it.
The one, other than only because we've been approached, it's worth checking on the workers' comp.
But
Yeah.
isn't the only thing, I thought the only two entities that could give you workers' comp were Medic and,
Apparently there's other one. According to the promotional email.
I have another one too,
But
just on my raise 40% this month.
who do you have your workers' comp with?
It's through a broker that I work with down in Scarborough.
Davey and Tago,
No, it's not done,
that's what we used to do.
but it was amazing, because I was paying a considerable amount for workers' comp for my employees, and now it's down 30%.
Really? That's not something that I.
But again, I also haven't had a lot of,
Experience?
well, I don't experience modifier yet, but I haven't had any accidents.
So your rating is still pretty low.
Yes,
the other insurance that I think I'm at the point I want to start shopping is we have a high deductible health plan to save money in the premiums, and it has a health reimbursement account attached, which is one of the lines here is, it's like 66,000, which has been working pretty good because we have found that people haven't been really drawing enough that we have to keep adding more and more every year, unlike the premiums that go up. But the company that administered that was bought out by Right Express, right, the Richard Group Dynamic. And they used to do a good job and used to be pretty smooth. They sold to some other company called Flora back in October, and we have had horrible service that happened.
Flores.
Flores, Flores.
Yeah, Flores.
And we had employees sent checks that shouldn't have been sent. And then some of them were smart and didn't cash it. Others thought they were supposed to get it because the health insurance works with this one and this one was supposed to get what they call automatic feed. So the employee doesn't have to do any work and they used to get paid the appropriate amount. Now they tried to hit our bank account to Kathy one day to reclaim the money they mistakenly paid. And so Kathy had to work with them to get that straightened out. And now they still have some of our employees that they're saying, you need to pay us money back, and the employees are trying to keep something they're not entitled to, but some of them spent it not realizing that they weren't entitled to it. So it's becoming a mess, and people try to call them up and they don't answer the phone. So that's one I'm interested in starting to try to shop, just because we get horrible service.
We got, from all of the, this was tax collectors, treasurers thing. It went around today and there's like 4 or 5 names in there because everyone's sick of Flores now. Group Dynamics did work really, really well. So yeah, it might be time for next year to get a new company.
So I guess in closing, points well taken, and we will shop things around and see if we think we can do better.
We may have less deals now,
But it doesn't hurt to look.
doesn't hurt to look.
Right.
It's a good.
All right,
Dave wasn't
contractual
stretching it for the
services.
last hour.
Now we're on page 24. And the first one on here is professional services. This money basically goes to pay for consultants, professionals that we need to work on different projects. The select board on the next agenda is going to get one for a request to authorize us to spend some more money on the recode process. We've been paying professionals to help write the code or rewrite the code, and so that this is the line that money would come out of. So even though we haven't spent much out of it this year, we'll soon be spending more. Another thing we're working on is our shoreline zoning no longer matches some of the state stuff. So we've got a contract with someone for about $6,000 to come over, and an expert who does that stuff to come up with a new draft. So that's in the process of being worked on.
Should bump up legal for that, Mark.
Should what?
Bump up legal in corresponding to the amount of areas that we're putting shoreline zone.
Yeah, well, I don't think we have to bump up legal. So that brings us to the next line. So we are actually proposing to cut legal by $10,000. So right now, we've spent $4,300, it was budgeted at $50,000. You might say, come on, Mark, you should cut that more than that. The reason we aren't in favor of that is we only spend it if we have to, but if we have to, it gets spent real quick. And right now, we probably have about 10,000 that's gonna be coming from it. It just hasn't happened yet because we have a deductible on our liability insurance of $10,000 when we get sued. And the police department is being sued right now. Yeah, this one. Because a gentleman who had a domestic violence conviction got turned down for a gun permit. So he found some high-powered law firm down in Washington, DC that's suing our police chief, the town, I think the state police, or there's a bunch of people in the lawsuit. But it's not, something you can ignore. So Maine Municipal has said, yeah, that's a legitimate suit. You guys acted appropriately, so we'll defend you. But they said, just remember, you've got a $10,000 deductible. And that isn't just because I don't think they're gonna have to pay anything in the actual case, but you have to pay towards legal fees too. So that will be, I don't know if it'll be this year's budget or next year's, but that'll be a $10,000 hit likely, because by the time they write their pleadings back to respond in federal court to this stuff, so 10,000 would be great. And then if the other reason that we had bumped it up for this year was because of recode, because we knew we wanted the town attorney to be able to read it with a fine comb, and he has made some very valuable suggestions to it. The good news is it cost a lot less than we thought for that, but we're also not done with it, so there'll be some more things. Other things that we sometimes use legal fees for that so far we've been in pretty good shape this year. But if someone files suit to challenge a planning board decision or a zoning board of appeals decision, we end up paying the town to represent us in that. Maybe a union grievance. Sometimes we have labor issues that we talk to the attorney Burton Sure that does that. I already talked about the deductible for the MMA liability coverage. And if we have a new ordinance or something that we needed to get assistance with, we use the town attorney for that. So we try to use it as sparingly as possible but I think it's prudent to have 40,000 there going into next year just in case. These things we need to be returned for.
Mark, do we still use MMA legal too? Because we pay for that.
We use that for general things, but they don't do specific,
No.
issues. So we've been using Bernstein Shore at least since I've been here,
Right,
and,
yeah.
I don't get paid for this, but they're a wonderful firm. The nice thing about Bernstein Shore is they have a lot of specialists and different stuff. So if we need a labor issue, we've got someone we can go to for that. This paid family medical leave has all kinds of complex twists. And most of them, we think we've sorted out right, but we run it by her to make sure that we think we've sorted it, and she helps us out with that.
Yeah, Mark, isn't MMA more advisory?
Exactly. Yeah, that's more advisory rather than, they'll tell you like the general law, which a lot of that we can look up.
Yeah,
ourselves.
whether you should consult the town attorney.
Yeah, but then the town attorney gives us this specific case.
It used to be they'd give you a written opinion, then they got away from that.
Yeah.
The guy that died there ice skating, do you remember that? Well, anyway, he was a great lawyer there, and if I called or anybody, any of the departments called, he was right there. He'd send us an answer in writing. But you can't get them to do that now, I don't think.
There's a couple of things in the past year that, not this budget year, but last, there was a piece of property down the road from Ruth that we worked on getting cleaned up, and we used that. By the time the town attorney's bill was like $15,000 on that one, but we were able to get it reimbursed out of the closing. So although it showed as an expense, we had to rather go somewhere else to cover it. But things come up every now and then. He comes to town meeting, he looks over our warrant, various stuff. Unemployment, you may say, why is that so low? And you mentioned Catherine say that she now had to pay unemployment. We're able to be self-insured because we're a municipality, so we're only have to pay if we have a claim. And we remember a few years ago, this is quite a few back when Gary Brown was in Brunswick, and the police department is losing like 7 positions. So one of the things Gary had to do when he did the budget was he had the savings of the positions he was cutting, but he had to put in a bunch of money for unemployment because the town was going to be on the hook for that for the people laid off. But we have trouble finding people. I don't think we have any risk of laying people off at this point, so we can leave the unemployment low. All right, capital. I'm not going to talk about the items that people already did. So you heard about from the fire chief, you heard about the bleachers. I'm going to explain my significant changes to it. Some of this I referenced the first night, but I'll explain why again. And again, these are just my thoughts, and you guys are hopefully the ones that matter, and go through it. 33. So you'll notice last year in the capital replacement line, Derek had budgeted 350,000. And his thought was he wanted to build up a fund, it could be used for 2 purposes. One would be if you have an emergency, there's something there. So if, God forbid, the whole heating system dies, we're not having to have a special town meeting, there's something sitting that can be spent. The other thought is we build that up and it helps, maybe makes it much less likely we have to bond a new fire truck or something because we've got some savings built up or whatever project might be. That balance is right now 645,000. Certainly isn't enough for a new ladder truck, but it would be enough for pretty much any emergency we have.
Yeah.
So I'm recommending that we not put more money into that this year. And again, the reason why is because when we know we've got personnel expenses going up, and we know that we're going to have to be using less fund balance, as I discussed the first night, we got to find some place to get some savings. So this is where I'm proposing we get it from. I'm also proposing we reduce the paving for basically 2 reasons. One is, as you heard from Dennis last night, our roads are in pretty good shape at this point. The other is, and this came up in the select board meeting back in September when we were trying to figure out how much surplus to use. We're having trouble getting everything paid for all the money we were spending. So the point was, why is the town holding money and taxing it if we can't spend it for the purpose? We currently still have from last year $500,000 left in paving money. Dennis is hoping he can get all that spent before June, and you saw his plan of the roads he wanted to use it on last night. Then you saw his plan of the new stuff he wants to do this year, which he believes 500,000 is going to cover. So for this year's budget, we're recommending only putting in 500,000, and hopefully all our paving money will be spent. We won't have money sitting around there for paving. Then in some of the prior budgets, you saw we had money for what Derek called development projects and construction. And so the money was kind of separated towards doing engineering design and then the actual building. What I'm proposing this year is that we have one combined line. And I'm gonna talk in a minute about the things that the money could be used for. And I'm also gonna tell you up front, it can't be used for all of them because there isn't enough. If we were gonna actually put the sidewalks into Tetford Road this year, Wright Pierce hasn't given us the final design or estimate, but they're thinking it's gonna be in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 million. Maybe more towards the two because of the drainage work that has to be redone in the rebuilding. So we're not ready to pay for all of that. The select board did set aside in August over $300,000 for that project. So we've got some money already sitting there towards it. And so what we're probably doing this year is finalizing the design and then putting some more money towards the side and hopefully finish it the following budget year. So that's one of the things that I would like this money to be able to be used for, be Tetford Road improvements and design. Also, if the culvert runs over, we think we have enough money to pay for it, especially if we access this TIF that has 114,000 in to be used for Tetford Road improvements. But if for some reason things are worse than we think in the soil and the contractor was an overrun, then I'd like the flexibility that this money could go towards that too. The other, actually this thing I should have put on here, I didn't, is the other project left over from last year that I think we're gonna have enough money, especially if we access the TIF to pay for part of Pleasant Point Road, is we need to finish the pedestrian and parking lot improvements at Forsyth Field, which Dennis had estimated about 200, we think we get less. But if for some reason we suck up all of the 2025 budget money with the Tetford Road culvert, then that would be probably one of the first projects to come out of this to finish last year's work. We are going to have next week, or sorry, 2 weeks, I guess, the 26th, we're having the meeting here on Pleasant Point Road. The result of that meeting, assuming that the neighborhood's happy with it, is a conceptual design. It's basically going to have different areas of Pleasant Point Road. Some that say in this area, we think it can be a nature-based solution. It would be involved plantings that will help protect the road. Others, it might have to be rock, so to speak, because it's not enough space for plantings or something. And then there's the corner that may need to have the road raised and a big culvert, which could be in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 million. But these are all, this conceptual design is not a final design. So what has to be done is a final design and then the money for construction. Our thought is that we take this conceptual design and we look for whatever, things have changed in the past 2 weeks, but we look for what grant opportunities might be out there. We were eyeing one we thought might be a possibility to get some hazard mitigation money with some preference. They really like nature-based solutions. And if it's, say, you got a 20% match or something, then it would be a source of money to come up with a match and then pull down the grant money and then get the final design and the implementation of, say, the nature-based solution on a certain piece. Or if a grant came up that we thought might do the corner that needs the road raised, then this could be some matching money for this. Obviously, we're going to do a whole project. Other things this money could be tapped for is, as you had heard Ed talk about, our compactor in the area transfer station is getting long in the tooth and is probably going to have to be replaced. That's not something we can just go out and buy a compactor. We're going to need an engineer to come up with a design and figure out the way to do it. There also may be things involved with the transfer station that one good example is the compost area. Ed's composting so much stuff, he doesn't really have space anymore. But believe it or not, you have to get a special permit from the state for your compost area.
Yes. Yep.
So what that's going to entail is we're going to have engineering design just to repave an area to put compost on. We've also talked at different times about whether we want to have scales. As you heard Ed say that he has to kind of estimate what he thinks someone's load is. Most places have scales that you drive on and you know exactly what it is. And it's easier for us to make sure that the user's paying the cost of getting rid. Derek had a gentleman with a firm down in Portland come and he didn't really he didn't do any designs, but he gave ideas of things that we could benefit from. And finally.
Mark, excuse me.
Yes.
You said we have to pave an area so that then we can compost on top of it?
Yep.
How stupid is that?
But I don't think it probably isn't so stupid.
I agree.
There's this thing called crazy worms.
Oh, yeah, the jumping ones.
Yeah, and so they need to be able to separate the compost from the rest of the environment.
That's
You know,
true.
they don't want things going in the ground and coming up.
Yeah.
So there's
Well, then
reasons
they're
for it, but it's
Pave the sides, they're gonna make a fall.
a state license, part of it,
Right.
requirement.
So the compost, that'd be addition to what we already had.
Exactly. So it wouldn't be, it'd be enlarging our current.
Yeah, because I remember when we went through this the first time around, it's the same question. It's just like, what do we gotta do? Whatever.
They're also made, as we learn more about this extended producer responsibility thing, there may also be ways that we can make more money from our recyclables if we do things certain ways. So we might either need more storage or like, one of the things, as Ed mentioned, is we ship out our own cardboard. It saves it when the market's right. So it might be we want to add a little more storage capacity for cardboard or, and maybe we want to, yes.
Why do you say cardboard?
Oh, because we sell the loads. So our goal is to try to actually make money on the stuff when we can. So, and it's the market, like after Christmas, Ed tries not to sell cardboard because everyone is getting rid of their cardboard at that time when the market depresses. So Ed tries to pick a time when the market's low but at some point, our trailers are full and we have no more storage space. So Ed has to send it. But he does a good job of trying to raise times. So what we would propose this would be for, could be for as well as some engineering work at the transfer station to figure out what projects we need in the future and about plan for those. I almost hesitate saying this. But
I understand, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
So- Another possible use of some of this money would be if the community center committee does their report to the select board and they say, we want you to continue on, the next step is what they call a 15% design, which is what would be enough to try to give a real cost estimate. What I would like to say on the table is if you guys decide, you know what, we don't want to have any way whatsoever, any money going towards the community center, I prefer you in your negotiations or whatever, that you said, please take that out as a purpose, not as opposed to cutting money, because as I said before, this isn't enough money for everything. So if you have a purpose you don't like, what we'll do is when we print the warrant, that won't be one of the allowed purposes. Because we need to have whatever things we could spend the money on in the town meeting warrant. So if you don't like the community center thing, take it out, but that's why it's in there, is so that if people decide that, if select board decides to go forward with the project. The only other editorial comment I'll make is that I'd like to think there's still a compromise and a way to pay for this that can make it a win-win situation. That you're right, Bill, if we did the entire, and Mark Lee isn't suggesting to do that entire thing, but the entire building with pool would be $25 million. And that's not gonna, no one thinks that's gonna fly.
Bonded.
Even if we bonded it, no one thinks it's gonna fly. Or at least, I shouldn't say no one, but I think that's generally accepted. Some of the things we've tried to do to make the community center as affordable as possible is we look for sites that the town owns. There's two sites that we're looking at. One site is, we need the cooperation of the fair, because we have a 20-acre piece that sits between the fair and Route 196. The nice thing about that piece is it's also adjacent to the railroad tracks. We've heard about the railroad tracks may be proposed to at some point be changed to this Merrimack Trail.
Being
Go from-
destroyed.
What?
Being destroyed.
Being destroyed, but the
Because the only
Merrimack
thing our
Trail.
town can do to fight climate change is being wiped out by the Bicycling Coalition of Maine, but that's okay. It's
But-
good. Sorry.
But maybe we can also make sure you can ride your horses on the trails in Topsham and your ATVs. But if this gets developed into this trail, Topsham's gonna need a place to access it. I guess if we have no other choice, people can park at the Forsyth Field and ride bikes down to the, get to the railroad tracks that way. But the vision I think could benefit is have the community center on this site next to the fairgrounds and have the parking lot also serve as an access jumping off place to use the Merrimack Trail. So it's a place you can park your car and do it. Also, we could give us more connectivity if this trail goes through. So you'd be able to connect from Highlands to Tedford Road. We're already working on our sidewalks and things. we've got the trail that starts here and goes across, to Community Way. The state right now is more than thinking, they're planning for making the bypass into 4 lanes. We've approached the state and
Finally.
we've approached the state and we said, can you keep us in mind? And if you have any extra space in your roadway, it'd be nice to be able to finish the trail from Community Way, at least to our parcel the town owns. So we get one more piece of the connectivity, plus then it could be eventually be connected to this Merrimack Trail. That may or may not work because there's some wetlands behind the football field that were conserved as part of the offset for the building of the highway, and they're not sure they have enough space between the road and the wetlands. But these are all discussions that we're having, and there's possibilities, but only ideas at this point. But anyway, so the point back to the building, we've used as a driving principle that whatever site we pick, we want to make sure it has enough room so it could be expanded later. So in the likely event that the community says, yeah, we can't do it all now, but maybe we do want to do the big multi-purpose room. So there's a place for seniors to walk and there's a place to have classes, whatever it might be, that the rest could be added later. But we need 2 things to happen to use the site at the fairgrounds. One is we need the state to go along with, there's a restriction on the property. It says it has to be used for community purposes as a rest area or a picnic area. We think that was an error because the state deeded this around the same time that the state was getting rid of a lot of its rest areas. We think it was left in their form. I've been in touch with the legal department at DOT and they're like, you guys got to keep this. It has to be used by the community. But we're willing to take out the picnic area and rest stop. So that's in process. I have to follow up with them and see where we're at, but they said they could do that. The second thing is we need to get to it. So right now it's landlocked. So we need to convince the fairgrounds that they are interested in giving us a right of way. I think there's win-win things we could do with the fairgrounds.
Feeling that, Murray?
But
I'm not on the board.
Okay.
It takes the whole
But you
membership,
don't
doesn't
need-
it? It would take a vote of the
yeah,
fair membership.
I'm not a
I think.
legal authority on the fairgrounds.
I think so.
But I think there's win-win things we could do with them, but they have to think the same thing. So if that doesn't work out at the fairgrounds, our second spot is we have 30-acre piece on the north side of Forsyth Road. So we've got the lacrosse field up above that, and there's a wooded area. In that wooded area behind the lacrosse field would be the second site. Advantage, that site would probably be cheaper to develop. You've got sewer right at the Legion, so you only have to come down the hill there. Water district's already told us that they've got sufficient water in Thomas Ave, that we could connect there. We would not propose to put the access through Thomas Ave because it'd be too much traffic. So the access would come up down from Forsyth Road. But both sites are town owned, so we're not having to spend any money for land acquisition. Both sites are big enough so there'd be room to future addition. So go ahead.
Yeah, so if one day in the future, the full build out that you're anticipating were to be done, what size lot would be necessary? How much land would be necessary?
I don't think I know that exact answer. I can tell you that both sites have more than enough.
More than,
Yep. I think probably be like 10 or 12 acres is what would, because you can't just pave everything, you have to have permeable areas and stuff.
and when you threw out that $25 million figure a while ago, did that include a land acquisition piece?
That includes the building. But that number is a back of the envelope thing.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And again, that's everything. And I think
Is that
people realize you can't
employees
do
and
everything.
would that be employees and
That's
maintenance,
just
everything.
building construction.
that's what I thought, yeah.
Yes.
I would, Ryan made me think of something earlier, and I thought this point was very impactful. You're gonna spend $25 million on a community center, but not 900,000 for a library. I don't get that. What are all those people that you talk about gonna feel about that? Building something that they may never use or have to get to by various transportation. It seems like something's really
I
lopsided.
just don't think we're there yet.
No,
I think this is more of a conversation that's happening to see if there are people in the town that want it and will use it. There's no guarantee. There's just there's a fraction of people that want it, so they formed a committee and they're going forward with trying to make it happen. It may be that we find ways to earn revenues or fill out grants that money can come in. We understand money as the obstacle, and if we can't overcome that obstacle, then it just doesn't happen. You know, but when money is the issue, if you can raise the funds, or if you can get grants, or if you have other trusts that you can, or endowments that you can pull from, then it might be a win-win situation, and those are things that are constantly discussed, but I agree, I mean, the money's a lot of money. And the benefit to the town would be great, but it's still a lot of money, and we have to play that back and forth with each side.
Well, I think fundraising for the library too. I mean, the town did for the bill for that, so.
Just building the building though, even if you got the funds for it, the costs are in the long-term maintenance, the employees and all of that stuff. There's a lot of costs besides $25 million.
Absolutely.
And I think they're going through that now, and I think.
Oh, I know they are, and it's a good committee, but, my question on that, how much have we spent on studies already for this? Quite a bit, I think, over 50?
No.
Nope, but we're
The
close.
first one was, I think, it was like 16,000, and this most recent one was like 17, so we.
Okay.
But we've been doing this for like 15 years. I mean, this is.
Let me limit that to,
It's been a while.
let me limit that to what I've been involved with. So
Right.
since I've been here, we've had Harriman Associates. They're on their second contract with us, and the total will be 33. So I don't know that money was paid on consultants before the past couple of years.
But
I think this is a very good point about, the discussion about the library, because I hear you talking about 2 parcels of land, and yet in, you know, the efforts around collaboration, certainly you would think that, especially since it's got a kind of a gravitational pull right now, the library, why the heck wouldn't that, you know, parcel of land, I mean, we don't, obviously don't.
Probably that was not big enough.
Come on, man, we can build up, you don't have to always cut trees.
They're just the parking spaces. If we had a community center, I think
Put them on bikes.
it's about 120 parking spaces, and you couldn't even add that to the library.
well, you know, the dental office is moving,
Right.
so the whole area is probably gonna be for sale.
And a lot of it, you're close to the river, so you.
I thought they were keeping that, and they were making.
They are
Well,
keeping it.
I go there and I talk to them and they weren't quite sure, but first they were keeping it, and then I heard there was another dental group or some kind form of dental going there, but I don't know.
But anyway, I think the minimum, you certainly aren't gonna fit a pool and things there, but even the minimum large
Yes, a
multi-purpose room. The minimum large multi-purpose room that
Yeah.
you wanna build to have a community center isn't gonna fit with the library site.
I think Matt had it, I know you might have been a little bit facetious, but I actually think you have a very good point.
Always very facetious.
Excellent, good. Was Topsham being a leader in saying, wait a minute, the avenues that we're going down, they sound great, but why not being leaders in terms of advocating for the state to get back to using those railroads for what they were built for? I mean, there was so much really good transit
agree.
across the state.
Yep.
Versus, anyway,
That ship is unfortunately sailed.
she can lead a revolt.
Give it to me.
You got thousands of people.
Mark, can you just help me understand what the process is? I mean, I've been hearing about the community building since I've been on here, and like others have said, it's been a whole process, but what are the steps? And where are we in those steps? I guess that's what I'm not quite sure about.
The initial step was, the select board said a couple of years ago, we want to know, we want to get a survey, we want at least 1,000 people to respond to it that are Topsham residents, and we want them to say that they're interested in this for us to go any further. We had some Bowdoin students help us with that survey, and we had the requisite number, and there was people in there said, yes, we want to do it. So then the next step was Harriman and Associates was hired to get what's called the needs assessment of the community and try to figure out, do we need one? What spaces are available that could say could we use school spaces for programming? Unfortunately, the school spaces are all booked and filled, and so there isn't space there. We're in danger of having our voting kicked out of there. Last last March, Linda contacted, or before March, but she contacted the school and she said, you know, we've got the primary elections. Can we do them at the school? It's been working good. And initially they told her no. They said, we don't want that mixing with the kids. We don't want to have to take a day off. It's a security risk. We don't want to do it. Finally, she convinced them it's only going to happen once every 4 years and said, well, okay, you can do it this year. But that's something that we've done it at the fairgrounds. They've been gracious enough to let us, and we've done that in the past. But sometimes that hasn't worked so well depending on the weather. Yeah, so that could be another purpose of the community center, be a place to do our voting.
Well, I'm not worried about, so it's just the process, so you had the chairman.
So back to the process.
Right.
So that needs assessment happened, reported back to the select board, and the select board said, okay, takes the next step, which is to figure out the, what the space would look like, what it would cost conceptually, you know, not the final number. That's what's going on now. And the group's also looking around to try to see what, might be funding opportunities and stuff. The group's gonna come back and report to the select board late spring, early summer, and give a report, and then the select board determine what happens next.
So I guess my question is, when they come back with the funding, what they foresee as the building costs and that kind of thing. Can we also somehow determine maybe what a budget would look like, a yearly budget would look like to maintain that?
Yep.
Because I think that's what we need to put out to the voters. They need to see what they're
Everything.
agreeing to.
Yes.
And that's why using Harriman Associates
Yeah.
is so important, because they're actually people that deal with these buildings,
Yeah.
build them, know what they
I'm
cost. So, yeah, but that is all that
Yeah.
can be collected.
Yeah, I just think sometimes oh yes, let's get, I want a new car, but then when you get the new car and you forget about all the insurance and everything else. And so I think if we're gonna truly ask them, is this something you want in your life, in our life, and as a community, they need real numbers about what that's gonna look like and what that means
Yep.
on their tax bill.
It means everything, absolutely.
Exactly, go ahead.
Yeah, along those lines, are they going to come up with, say, 3 concepts of varying expense and size? I mean, or are they going to come up with the Taj Mahal and the price tag? I mean,
Let me put it this way, I know the committee knows, because I told them, that they're gonna have to be able to find a way to make this palatable, and 25 million is gonna be palatable. Whether it be by phasing things, whether it be by, maybe they're given a deadline, you know, and we talk to the town attorney and we find a way to set up a fund for donations, and maybe it's, you have until, if the conceptual design for what people, think is reasonable, let's say it's $12 million. And maybe the committee's told you need to raise 4 million in the next 2 years or something, and then if you do that, then we'll go to the next state, or, there's all kinds of things that could be suggested. But I expect that people would, in general, have the reactions a lot of you are having and saying, you gotta find a way to do this cost effective and at a scale that we can do it. And maybe people will say no. I'm not here tonight asking you to fund a community center. All I'm asking is that we include this as a possible purpose, so that if maybe they come back with something that you guys think is reasonable in July or August, and so we'd be able to take the next step to figure out the real cost. Is this what they call the 15% plan? So this would be a source of money that would help pay for the 15% plan.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting in the survey that the community center did was they had people say, do you want a pool? Do you want this?
Right.
And then through that, it's like, okay, this is how much that's gonna cost. Do you still want it? And that was an interesting way for them to do that. And so, you know, I can only speak for myself. I can't imagine us building a pool and making it that big, but maybe something smaller that would take care of the needs and not the wants of everyone. And then we don't want to compete with other businesses that are around, the YMCA's, the rec centers, there are other places. And so we have to look at all of those things. I frankly haven't made up my mind. I'm waiting to see what they have to offer.
Think about where we are right now and how nasty it looks like. And not having to walk out in the slush and my dog like cow and feel and cars go by. You get outside and into a place where multiple people want to walk.
And that's been the most popular option at the live in-person sessions, at all the surveys. It's been a walking track.
But I'd like a comment on the voting place. I watched the Secretary of State the other day said schools will be used for voting. Because it's very important, even if we have to declare it a school holiday. So I don't think there's gonna be any danger of not being able to vote at the schools.
I hope that's right. because
I think
that's
it
the best
is.
spot that votes if you-
Right, right, exactly. But what I'm saying is the state, it's really their elections, no matter what, and they're gonna dictate to the town. And what I heard that she is proposing that all schools be open for voting. And I think that will happen and probably should happen.
After litigation.
Yeah, yeah, I don't. Truthfully, I'm for a community center. If it's self-paying, everybody pays their share. If a family of 4 joins, they have so much. And if a family of 2 joins, they have so much. But I think we have to reach everybody, and I don't think we've done that in that survey. There's a lot of people that didn't answer it, and there's a lot of people that are angry to think it's even on the table. At least they've expressed it to me. Of course, I like that. But seriously, I don't think we're covering everybody.
And I think you're right, that
Yep.
it's self-selective, the people that often do the survey.
Right.
What I will say is, I can't think of anything more we could have done to get people to answer. We had Pam putting things on Facebook, we had paper things out here, we had the cards that you asked about tonight printed, we're handing out the transfer station. We did everything we could to try to get as many people as possible.
And I agree with that. I don't disagree with that you didn't try to reach everybody, but 2/3, if you go to a neighborhood meeting and say, they'll say, we didn't know about it. And they'll say, well, or we'll say, because the public, we print it in the newspaper, we did this, we had surveys for this. I don't have time for that. And that's what we heard at all the neighborhood men, we don't communicate well. But a lot of people choose not to, and
So I'm hearing that's not a matter of not communicating, that's a matter of.
That's what
them
I
not
said.
wanting to do it.
that's
So,
what.
I don't think saying that this survey is,
I'm not
lacking.
saying it's not communicating. What I'm saying is, like most surveys and most governments, is slanted. That's what I'm saying.
Didn't you come and testify against this, the whole community center as a whole, like 3 or 4 months ago during public comment?
Yeah.
Okay, but you just said you were okay with it as long as.
I'm still that way. But if it's if people pay for it and the town, I will support it. I might even donate to it, but I just think a burden for this town is terrible.
so it's nothing that we're gonna be able to resolve tonight, so.
No, there isn't.
It's like say, hold on.
So the community center meeting, community meeting.
Okay.
So the last 2 items that I'd like to have
On
as
there.
potential things here that we could spend out of this would be, we periodically, it wasn't bad this past fall because we've had,
I agree.
almost drought. But periodically we'll get complaints, kind of get bubbled up again at Bay Park because of water issues. Part of what was done that was pretty effective was 10 years or so, or now the ponds levels were lowered at the dump. This is a hydrologic connection between the ponds at the dump and Bay Park, and that helped. But whether it's climate change or whatever, things have gotten worse in Bay Park, and there's more pumping and there's more people getting stuff in their basements. Dennis also found that unfortunately, the guy that developed Bay Park, I think I said this the first night, so I'm not gonna repeat it.
Yeah, they did the drainage.
Didn't build what he should have done for sewers. Sorry, water drainage. So what this money could be used is to have someone see what it would cost for us to finish the work that needs to be done to connect Bay Park's drainage system to the stream that's behind it. We do have a paper street that's at one of the back corners that might be a place to put the line through. And then Ivanhoe, we're getting complaints about issues there. That one, I don't know if there's even a solution because it's really flat in there. But maybe we get a guy for the right price that can look at both of them and say, here's what the solution would be, or there is or not. So again, all these things aren't gonna get funded out of $800,000, but we'd like to have the ability to kind of work on these things depending on what opportunities present, either as being A, more serious, or B, there's a chance for a grant and we don't have a small match or whatever. So that's my pitch, is I'd like to have 800,000 for both design and construction for any of these projects.
Mark, one other thing that you.
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna get on my favorite pedestal here, our soapbox. I can guarantee you right now that if that bond passes for the trails, portion of that's going to go towards destroying railroad tracks. And there's going to be, while there's not now pressure to create additional access and parking for cyclists, that's absolutely going to be the case. And one access point, if, I don't want to go back to the community center here, but like if it is indeed built on the 196 parcel, that's not going to be enough. At least according to what the Bicycling Coalition of Maine says, it's going to solve all of our economic problems with all the revenue that comes flying on top and blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a lot of parking, there's going to be additional access that's going to be needed, more infrastructure. And if, God forbid, we actually allow everyone in town to use this trail as opposed to just a very small demographic, we'll need even more. So that might be another possibility, and that could be shorter term than we think, especially if that bond passes. Then obviously LD 29 is going to get to the legislature as well first.
So you're saying you'd like to have that added as a possible purpose?
I think I mean, I've already been run over roughshod on this and lost. So I mean, if we're gonna if we're going to destroy the tracks, then let's make sure that we have the infrastructure available to everyone and not just someone taking a bicycle ride.
Destroy them.
And one of the
Correct.
things, I talked to the current president of the fair about 10 days ago. And I said, even if you're really sure you don't want the community center there, and something else I'd like to pitch is there any interest in having us a right of way so we could put a parking lot on our piece that could access the tracks? And I haven't heard anything back on that yet, but that's the thought, would be the perfect place for that parking lot too.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm bringing it up now is just because there's things moving very quickly right now.
Yep.
And I mean, if that bond does pass, it would probably be next year when the agency would get the funding, they have to come up with 6 or 7 months, but they're trying to figure out how to get the money out the door, and then it would be.
I'm more than happy to add that as another allowed purpose in here. So
Well, could we put an addendum to that and also have part of that purpose to make sure it's slightly environmentally oriented so that there could be something like maybe leaving some trees for shade, so it's not just a complete wasteland of
yes.
asphalt and
no one has
impermeable or
no one has
permeable
plans to clear cut. That's
pavers
what
and.
No, but all that does need to be professionally designed. So so certainly if that's the input I get from you guys is to add that as another possible purpose before that happens. And that way the select board's got the flexibility to only be spent where it's most needed.
I think Don needs a pillow, he banged his head over there.
Oh.
No, I'm just,
I'm almost done.
it's just surreal, this whole.
Yeah. Welcome to Maine, sir.
Good input.
So on the public utilities, which is page 32, what'd you say? 32. Big thing in there, you notice we've added $20,000 for streetlight maintenance. We were just paying for the power to them, but now that the warranties are up, if things go wrong, we need money to fix them. So that's what the 20,000 added there is. Hydrant rentals, we got lucky. I don't know if we got lucky, but we had quite a few years of significant increases because the water district was jacking up rates to help pay for the new plant. But this year, the superintendent tells us if things go as he expects, it's just going to be only about a 2% increase. So that's why that isn't a huge increase this year. As we talked the first night, I made assumptions. They may or may not be accurate, but the best place I think to try to influence them, if you think they aren't, is to go to the segment county budget meetings or the SAD 75 budget meetings. But I've assumed that things would increase by 5% for each. And then overlay is, I think I mentioned the first night, it's that money that goes to cover if someone doesn't pay their taxes. You could do up to 5% of net appropriations. We've been doing about 150,000, even that we haven't spent every year. So we think we can keep that a low number to help reduce the tax burden. There's something called the Topsham Community Fund that had been funded in the past. It's money, like if you want to have a community picnic or something, you could do that. Problem is we have no one who wants to organize one. So since we have no one on the committee right now, we are not proposing adding money to it. And this has actually been the source of the money that's been paying for the community center study out of this month. And then, so maybe a little good news at the end. So Justin and I thought it would be useful to point out that one of our TIFs, this is the original, basically Highlands, if you think of the first one, that expires next June. So right now, in this current year, we're paying $243,000 back to the developer. It's actually no longer the original developer, it's sold again last October. But we're paying that money. That money will now be available for town purposes starting in fiscal year 27. And then at the end of fiscal year 2028, there's two other TIFs that expire. There's the Boat and Mill TIF, as well as one of the Highlands TIFs. And so that'll be about another $600,000 the town has. So just thinking, if we were to find a reasonably sized building with a reasonable share that the town would be paying to help build it, this could be a source of the money without taxes going up. Is that we would just dedicate the new revenue that we used to pay the developer to say paying them on. So just an idea or something. And that's the last I've got for tonight.
Thank you, Mark.